Hi again, Taylor here. We're going to dive into the workflow section first. So from the dashboard, let's click back into that non-fire to fire workflow. Let's talk about triggers to start. Triggers are represented as circles on the canvas. This is a webhook trigger, which means that anytime information is sent to this particular URL from an external system, we'll run this workflow in real time. When you're setting up a webhook trigger, it's important to also add authentication to ensure that this webhook endpoint doesn't get spammed. You can add basic authentication or an API key authentication requirement. Alternatively, we might want to have this workflow run on a schedule. Let's change the trigger type to cron schedule and then pick to have it run every day, every week, every month, or something custom. Like, gosh, how about every night at midnight? Yeah, or what about 4 a.m.? 4 a.m. works. All right, next thing we do, when we receive information here and this workflow starts, we're setting up our first path. And that first path, we've added a particular condition. So paths are the lines between all of these different steps. The conditions can be always or via JavaScript expression for that very first path. But then downstream, you'll notice that you also have options to run on success or on failure of the previous job. So the last thing you'll see on here are the steps, the jobs. This first step is to extract patient data, and this uses the language common adapter. We've got a ton of different adapters here, and you can add more. They're quite easy to build. This next job, this loads to a DHIS2 system. This one converts to fire, etc. If we click into one of these jobs and actually look at the inspector, we can see the inputs that are used, the job code that's executed, and if I run this, we can actually see the output over here on the right-hand side. So what's happening here? We have an input, some data coming from ComCare, for example. We're using an adapter, which gives us access to all of these different helper functions for working with the DHIS2 API. And these things are really cool. They allow us to do stuff like discovery and find out what's available on this DHIS2 system by using the credential. And in this case, we're connecting to a DHIS2 play system. So here, maybe I want to create data value sets, and inside data value sets, DHIS2 is telling me that I first need an org unit. If I use that type ahead, I can actually get a list of available org units in this DHIS2 system. This is pulled down from their metadata API, and I can pick the Allentown Health Post. It will add in the ID and give me a little helpful comment so I don't forget what I'm working with. So similarly, if we keep using the type ahead here, maybe we need to specify a type, and this one will be a drug batch. Maybe we need to specify some attributes. This will be a whole array of key value pairs. So the attribute would be, I don't know, birth date, and the value would be something 12/31/2020. Anyway, this is the inspector. This interface allows you to write job code and run it on the fly. So we can make changes, things will fail, things will work again, and we can actually see all those outputs really easily with the log viewer over here, the high-level run data, and we can actually look at the inputs and outputs for each of these individual steps. So here the import was successful. DHIS2 is giving us a thumbs up. This is really cool. To get from this inspector over to the history interface that we looked at in the overview, we could go back through the canvas, or we could actually click into the run itself. And this takes us to the run detail view on this history page. So this is just another way of seeing the run that's taking place, but it's a nice segue to our history interface. So the history interface. This is where you manage previously executed work orders you reprocess stuff, you find out what's went well, what needs fixing. And here we can actually see a few new work orders are coming in right now that are going to use that DHIS2 workflow we're working on. Great, here we've extracted patient data, convert to FHIR, load to DHIS2, fantastic. Okay, so a couple of successful entries here. From this interface, you can filter by various workflows. You can filter by status. Maybe we want to find just the failed work orders and reprocess them. Or you can filter by time, when the workflow is received, when the work order is received, or when the last activity took place on the work order. You can also search, and that's really big. So my name's Taylor. I'll look for Taylor here. Okay, no results found. Any inputs for Taylor? Doesn't look like it. Oh, a few. Okay, great. So you can actually find little pieces of information that have passed through OpenFn through this search interface, and that's really, really useful. Last thing to look at here. So for reprocessing prior runs, sometimes you'll want to retry a particular run from the start. That's fine. Here you can see run number 1. That's taken place. We've elected to reprocess it, and we'll see run 2 happen in just a second. Great, successful. But what if you have a data pipeline with some really heavy steps, and you don't want to reprocess the entire pipeline? You just want to retry from the final step. In that case, we could pick one of these individual steps in here, and we could retry just from the final step in that run. That's really nice because it saves us the compute time on these previous steps, which you can now see have been skipped. And when we view the run here, you can see that we didn't actually have to extract patient data or convert to FHIR again. We just loaded to the DHIS2 system. The input here is exactly what we would expect. Cool. Note on reprocessing, you can also reprocess in bulk. So you can retry either all of your selected work orders or everything matching the current filter. And if you limit this down to, say, a single workflow, so all of these are now using the non-FHIR to FHIR workflow, then you can actually reprocess from a single step. That's really cool. If you've built a workflow and realize later that step 5 didn't go right as you'd planned it to, you could modify step 5 and then reprocess thousands of previously executed work orders, just redoing step 5 and on. So this is a really, really cool feature. All right, that's it for the history interface. I will see you over at the settings page.